Okay, we will, I'll call the select board meeting to order.
And Capital Program Committee?
And in the absence of chair and vice chair, can someone from the FinCom call the meeting to order? No, they're not? Okay, sorry. Oh, okay. So don't deliberate on anything. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know that. Anyway, two organizations are called to order, and I'm going to turn it over to the chair of capital programs.
That may unexpectedly speed things up a little bit. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. I am hoping to make this relatively quick. It's intended to be an introduction to the FY21 capital requests with a very brief peek under the hood for capital program committee working documents. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. What the FinCom and Select Board members have, and there are more available, are the capital project request form. So we call it the SIP request form, a copy of that, and a copy of the Capcom's ranking of relative importance. That's a summary sheet. And the request form helps us to basically collect or attempt to collect useful data in assessing the relevancy and the importance of a request. And the ranking of relative importance worksheet helps us to formulate a valuation while eliminating, by pre-discussing and assigning values, eliminating a lot of discussion that would otherwise be necessary. So that saves us a considerable amount of time while not preventing us from being thorough. I am not necessarily going to go through these. I just thought it might be helpful for you, and especially new members, or a refresher for other members, to see what the request form looks like, what type of data is involved in it. I will note that if you flip to the second page of the cover, one of the elements that is part of a software initiative we've undertaken are costs that will be in a database that will be auto-filled for the department heads, so that we'll be able to get an even more comprehensive look at initial and ongoing costs. From there, we have the request summary sheet. And I'd like to, although this is a summary introduction, I'd like to thank the department heads for coming in. Appreciate your being available if any detailed questions pop up. That's helpful. We reviewed 59 capital requests in depth. Those requests, as submitted, total some $44 million. We have a handful more to review pending information from consultants and others. And some of those are not yet listed in the summary sheet before you. Examples of those are the RLN home facility. We'll be having a consultant or a summary review with an opportunity to ask detailed questions on that if that is brought forth. And also similarly, the senior center. So those are a couple of examples. Our final report will include our recommendations, which will include funding amounts, sources, other relevant information, and that will be issued timely for the FinCom and the Select Board decision-making processes. That was included, our date on that is later in January, and that was included in a schedule distributed in July, I believe, earlier this year. Other than that, I basically have broken down, jump right to the summary sheet. What you have before you is the cover sheet, our general fund requests by department. These are not, they're sorted alphabetically pretty much within the software. They are not sorted by amounts. We will be breaking these out by amounts above and below $1 million in our final report, as well as I mentioned, by funding source. If there are, I am aware through Capcom updates, the Select Board has been periodically reviewing or at least being made aware of what the requests are. And this may be the first time, unless the FinCom members have been to a meeting of the Select Board or received that information directly, that you're seeing some of these. So with that, I guess I would entertain any questions. I think first from the Select Board, or comments, and then we would proceed to the FinCom since you're just getting a copy of this. And again, this is a summary. We are conducting meetings, and if any details, if you're interested in any details, we're more than happy to provide them. Thank you. I'm sorry, could you come down, because I think they are they
Yeah,
audio
we're
video?
recording, so everyone's going to have to come to the mic.
So these are all new requests for FY21?
They're new. Their requests for FY21, some of them are they're phased funding, some are supplemental funding.
So what about the backlog of all the stuff we looked at last year? Like, is there an ongoing list of the stuff that didn't get funded last year that was on the Capcom's docket?
Yes and no. So once it's put into the system, it stays in the system with an alphanumeric code, which indicates the department and the year it was input. Although sometimes for instance, as an example, the select board strategy sessions may change priorities. So if a request came in for fiscal year 19 and it was not funded for fiscal year 19 and was recommended to be a fiscal year 20 or 21, it may not be in the fiscal year 21 because priorities have changed.
Right. So is there any kind of an ongoing list that shows all the other requests? Because I know that last year, one of the things we looked at was a backlog of other requests for like DPW, different stuff for the DPW, different stuff for waste. There were lots of other projects that didn't get all the funding for FY20, but we weren't ever really sure what was going to happen to them.
Okay,
afterwards.
I think I got a better handle on what you're asking.
Okay.
So basically, how that fits into the overall program is we take a 10-year outlook. So if a project isn't funded or isn't fully funded because it's phased, it will go into the out years report, so that we are looking at a 10-year picture of forecasting our capital investments and being able to project our debt service and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So that there is a comprehensive list, and that is available, and this year it will be attached to the report.
Okay.
Does that answer?
That is a better answer, yes. Thank you.
Strive to do better. Excellent. Everybody have a good night. No other comments at this
Wait a few
time?
minutes, maybe, to digest.
Yeah. Just a comment while you're looking through the paperwork. We will hone in on funding sources. We have a very general idea at this point, what will be reappropriation or a transfer, what will come from free cash, what debt exclusions, what may or may not be debt exclusions. But it's at this point preliminary to be commenting on those. Jason?
This is more for just discussion for everybody here. Just an example on DPW General, the CCTV phased work. When you look at the code and it says DPW 18, does that necessarily mean that that's when it first came into play? Mm-hmm. And it could be phased, or it could have been pushed off to later years.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really tell exact story, but it means it came in at an earlier time, right?
It does, and that's a good question, and it kind of feeds me another comment. So along the lines of reporting as to what's a backlog in a sense and what's a future year planning, the software that's in development will allow us to generate reports and at least, if not included in the annual report, include them in the FinCom and the Select Board review and discussions as to which projects were previously phased or are phased and received funding and what the amounts were, whether a request is supplemental funding, whether it is an out-year request that came in, for instance, FY19, and it's only being funded in FY22. So there'll be a great utility in having that information. That information is in the software, and I believe we'll be developing reports so we can access it easily.
Peter Schaefer. Going back to Joanna's question, so something that wasn't funded last year or 2 years ago, if it's not on this sheet with the code showing the year, then it's been dropped. Should we assume that?
No. If it's not on this is a sheet of FY21 requests that are being put forth for our review and a recommendation. Currently, as I said, there are a handful of others. If it's not on the sheet and it was a prior year request, It just means that it's not on this sheet. It's still an out-year request. Very rarely does a request, and in fact, I don't think, unless, I'll give you an example in a moment, very rarely does a request make it to Capcom and then just kind of disappear. The only instance in something like that would happen is, for instance, RL and Home came in for some ceiling tile replacement. We had an in-depth discussion. We determined, along with the department director, Brett, that perhaps there was some other way to approach that with both cost savings and bringing it out of the capital project definition and no longer above $50 or more $1,000. And it's no longer will be tracked as a capital request because it's an operating funded. The nature of the request has changed and the amount of the request has changed. It's no longer a capital request. Other than that, a request that makes it to us stays in our capital improvement plan, 10-year plan until it's funded. Or, and this hasn't happened yet, I presume until it's retired as a request by a department head.
Got it. And it gets repriced, obviously, as time.
Yeah. So in that instance, it serves as a placeholder. One of the things that we've been looking, pushing, and working on is incentivizing long-range planning in and amongst the departments and with town admin, which they all do a wonderful job, but getting it on paper for citizens to digest. So that would be part of having it in the 10-year plan.
Thanks.
Sure. Joanna?
Sorry. All right, two thoughts. One is, can we get a report sort of that shows the out-year requests so that we can kind of look at that information alongside this information? Because I think that would be helpful. And then the second thing would be last year's Capcom budget and sort of the status of those projects as they are now, because as you guys probably know, on the warrant, there's an article that specifically is addressing how these things are going to be voted on. And I think if we have the reports that show these things, it would be very helpful, not just to us, but also to the general public.
Okay, so let me try and approach this a couple of different ways. We typically do at Capcom a status of capital projects review, and we do that after the budget season and after the report is issued. We have not expanded past capital status project review as part of our annual report, and I do not believe that we would be doing it this year. If there are particular projects, I don't see why we couldn't do it, but I just want to say this is my night job.
Mm-hmm. No,
and
I understand. Mine too.
we are fairly thin in some regards on resources in that every department has conflicting priorities. So we put together what is the essential information and the fill-in information for FY21, and we can follow up, I believe, with past year update. With respect to out-year requests, those would be included in the out-year report, the SIP 10-year plan. Other than at a more detailed level than that, I just encourage people at every meeting, and I know this isn't your place, but it is. We announce public comment, and we've had, in the 3 years I think I've been chairing, we've had one person present for public comment. So we do post our agendas, and I'm not suggesting necessarily, Joanna, your comment, but it's an opportunity for me to say on camera to people, our notices as yours are posted on the town website. It's incredibly important for people to get involved. If you have a topic of interest, a particular department, a particular project, you can sign up on the town website. It will automatically send you that information and you can attend a meeting. We're happy to interact with people and try and get as much information as we can.
I mean, this is much improved from where it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But year over year, like looking at this document, this is
Yeah.
excellent, but I don't know what, I would have to go back in my notebook from last year and pull out the same report that you gave me to see what the differences were.
Totally understand. And as I was discussing with Brian earlier today, the greater amount of detail we can provide is important. But I just want to remind you, this is a summary introduction to these particular requests, and we can follow up with additional information
All right,
for FinCom processing.
great. That would be great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I mean, can you take this sheet from last year and so like funded, tabled?
Yeah, and
That
we can
kind of
apply
thing.
amounts, and it's actually information that I have in my master worksheet and Brian and I work with, but it's not information that's been put together in a presentable form. Not that there's any information that it's public information. It's scratch notes in a sense. It's all in Excel, but it's not formatted and made to be eliminate the internal coding of what my abbreviations and acronyms are. Other thoughts or comments at this point? Okay. What do you think?
I guess thank you all for coming, but we'll continue this discussion.
Yeah, again, it's an
Further.
introduction. There's a list. If there were particular projects you may have heard of and you have particular questions about, we wanted to have the department heads here to answer specifics. And we'll be putting together our report over the coming few weeks.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Aye.
Capcom motion to adjourn? Excellent. Thank you.